I don't remember the exact day I decided to join the army. I remember the feeling that came before it, a tightness in my chest that wouldn't leave, a sense that if I stayed where I was, my life would shrink into something quiet and resentful. My father worked 2 jobs. My mother worried in silence. I was the oldest daughter. Responsibility followed me everywhere, even into sleep. When the recruitment officer spoke, he didn't promise glory. He talked about discipline, structure, service. He talked about standing where others could not. I told myself I wanted purpose. The truth was simpler. I wanted to be stronger than fear. Leaving home was harder than I expected. My mother packed my bag too carefully, folding and refolding the same shirts. My father hugged me once. Hard, too long. Neither of them cried. That scared me more than if they had. On the bus to training, I watched the city disappear. Streetlights thinning. Buildings lowering, the world becoming quieter. Training broke me in small, repetitive ways. Not dramatically, just enough, every day. We ran until our legs stopped feeling like our own. We learned to eat fast, sleep light, listen always. My shoulders ached constantly from the weight of gear. My boots rubbed skin raw, then numb. At night, lying on a narrow bunk, I stared at the ceiling and counted breaths. Sometimes my hands shook from exhaustion. No one talked about it. You learned quickly that silence was part of discipline. When I earned my commission, my family smiled proudly. I smiled back. Inside, something already felt heavier. Border duty came sooner than I expected. A conflict zone people discussed on the news with maps and short sentences. In reality, it was dust, wind, long distances, and waiting. The border didn't look dangerous. That was the problem. During the day, the sun burned everything flat and colorless. At night, the cold settled deep into your bones. We wrapped ourselves in layers that never quite worked. The wind found its way in anyway. You learned the sound of the land. Which silence meant nothing. Which silence meant someone was moving. Before my first patrol, I couldn't stop checking my gear, straps, radio, magazine, again and again. I was an officer. People watched me for calm. Inside, fear moved slowly, like water rising. We walked in staggered lines, boots crunching softly over frozen ground. The night smelled metallic. I remember thinking how unfair it was that the stars looked so peaceful. Enemy presence was never confirmed, only suspected. That word followed us everywhere. Sometimes we found footprints, sometimes disturbed stones, sometimes nothing at all. The not knowing was worse than contact. The first time I heard gunfire, it didn't sound like movies. It was sharper, shorter. A crack that split the night open. Someone shouted a direction. Someone else shouted something different. The radio burst with overlapping voices. I dropped to the ground automatically. Training took over before thought. My heart hammered so loudly I was sure others could hear it. We returned fire without seeing faces, just shadows, movement where movement shouldn't be. I remember yelling commands and being surprised by how steady my voice sounded. I didn't feel steady. But my soldiers needed the sound of certainty. A young private near me froze. He couldn't move. His breathing was fast, shallow. I grabbed his vest and pulled him down behind cover. Not gently. There wasn't time. "Stay with me," I said. I don't know if he heard the words or just the tone. The firing stopped as suddenly as it began. The silence afterward felt unreal, like the world had been switched off. We waited. Minutes stretched. No one moved. When the all clear came, my leg shook so badly I had to sit. No one was hurt that night. That fact should have brought relief. Instead, it brought understanding. This could happen again. Any time. After that, sleep became shallow. Every sound snapped me awake. Wind against metal. A distant animal. A cough from another tent. Fear doesn't stay loud. It settles in quietly and rearranges you. There were more incidents. Not constant. Enough. One night, enemy movement crossed too close to our position. We tracked shadows through thermal scopes. Breathing held. Fingers ready. My radio pressed cold against my cheek as I whispered instructions. Every decision felt enormous. Every second carried weight. When shots were exchanged, it was brief and confusing. Voices overlapping. Commands repeated twice because no one trusted they were heard the first time. I remember the smell of dust kicked up by boots, the sound of my own breathing inside my helmet, the way time seemed to fold in on itself. Afterward, we accounted for everyone, again and again. One soldier had a shaking hand he couldn't control. I sat beside him until it passed. I told him it was normal. I didn't tell him mine shook too later when no one was looking. The moral weight of it all didn't arrive immediately. It came later. In quiet moments, when you stare at a border long enough, it stops being a line and starts being a question. Who belongs where? Who decides? Who pays? We weren't there to think deeply. We were there to hold ground, to follow orders, to keep each other alive. Still, at night, thoughts slipped through. I thought about the people on the other side, about families also waiting for someone to return, about how easily fear travels in both directions. War doesn't ask for your opinion. It just asks for your endurance. There was a night when we lost communication briefly. Only a few minutes. It felt endless. Without radio contact, every sound felt closer. Every movement dangerous. I kept my soldiers low and quiet. I remember thinking how young they looked in the dim light. How someone had once kissed their foreheads goodbye. When the signal returned, relief came so fast it made me dizzy. After months, the accumulation began to show. Short tempers, long silences, eyes that stayed alert even during jokes. We learned not to ask too many personal questions. You never knew which memory might break open. When my deployment ended, there was no dramatic moment. No music, just paperwork and a long ride away from the border. The landscape slowly changed again. Dust giving way to trees. Then buildings. People thanked us. I nodded politely. I didn't know how to explain that survival felt heavier than celebration. At home, everything seemed too loud. Doors closing. Traffic. Laughter. At night, I lay awake waiting for a sound that wasn't coming. Sometimes I still hear gunfire in memory. Not visually, just the sharp echo of it. The way it snaps you fully awake inside yourself. I think often about the private I pulled behind cover. He messaged me years later. He said he still remembers my voice that night. I didn't tell him that his face is one of the reasons I keep going. I didn't leave the army untouched. No one does. I carry the discipline, the control, the ability to stay calm when everything fractures. I also carry the quiet weight, the knowledge of how thin safety really is, how quickly normal life can dissolve into commands and shadows. I don't speak about it often, not because I'm proud, because some things lose their truth when spoken too loudly. Sometimes, late at night, when the world finally slows, I sit in silence, not the dangerous silence of the border, a gentler one. But even then, part of me listens, always listening.